true real-life story. He was the most careful man at the land sale, until her one question changed his entire decision. Some people walk into a room and you can just tell. You can tell they have thought about this more than anyone else there. They have done the work. They have read everything, printed everything, checked everything twice. They are not there to get excited. They are there to make a decision, and only if the numbers say yes. That was this man. He was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who looked like he had spent years working with his hands before switching to working with his mind. He wore a plain blue shirt, tucked in. He carried a folder under his arm, not a thin folder, a thick one, the kind that takes a whole evening to prepare. He arrived at the land auction before almost anyone else. The sun was still low, the parking lot mostly empty, and the registration table had not even been set up yet when he pulled in. He chose his parking spot carefully, far enough from the entrance to see who arrived, close enough to leave quickly if he needed to. Then he sat in his car for a few minutes, opened the folder on his lap, and went through his notes one more time. He had been to this kind of auction before, many times. Over the years, he had attended more land sales than most people attend in a lifetime. He had walked fields, checked county records, driven past properties at different times of day to see how the light hit them, how the drainage looked after rain. He had developed a scoring system, his own, handmade, nobody taught it to him. Every property got rated on things like road access, soil quality, flood history, neighboring land use, proximity to utilities. A perfect score was 100. He had never bought anything below 78. Most times, he walked away. That was the thing people misunderstood about him. They assumed all those years of research were building toward buying. But really, they were building toward knowing when not to buy. That was the harder skill. That was what separated him, he believed, from the people who made regrettable decisions in auction rooms. The ones who got swept up in the energy of the bidding and raised their cards $10,000 past what they had planned. He was not going to be one of those people. He had a ceiling written at the top of his sheet for today's lot, the one he had come specifically for. 22 acres on the edge of a township he knew well, partly wooded, a small creek running through the lower portion, road frontage on two sides, which was rarer than people realized, and made the land far more flexible for future use. He had rated it a 73. 73. Below his usual threshold. He knew that. He had written it down. And still he had come. He told himself it was because the creek bordering the property ran very close to a stretch of land his father had leased for hay farming decades ago. Land this man had played on as a boy. He told himself that was not a reason to buy anything. Childhood memory is not a financial consideration. Sentiment is not a line item. He was aware of all this. He repeated it to himself on the drive over, twice, maybe 3 times. By the time the auction began, 60-something people had registered. He had counted them. He had also sorted them in his head, the serious buyers, the curious onlookers, the investors looking for anything that might yield a return, the representatives from development companies who wore matching jackets and always stood in pairs. He noted who gathered near which lots. He noted who asked the auctioneer questions and who stayed silent. Information. All of it was information. The first several lots moved quickly. He watched without interest. When his lot came up, he straightened slightly in his seat. He was not aware he did this. The bidding opened at 60,000. It moved upward in steady increments. A few people raised their cards and then stopped. The crowd thinned, the way it always does when the number climbs past what most people came prepared to spend. By the time it reached 90,000, there were maybe 3 or 4 serious bidders left. He was one of them. His ceiling was written in pen at the top of his sheet. $112,000. He had never gone over a ceiling in his life. He was proud of that. It was one of those quiet, private things a person is proud of, that nobody else knows about or cares about, but which matters deeply to the person themselves. That was when the woman turned around. He had not paid much attention to her before that moment. She was sitting 2 rows ahead of him, slightly to his left. Older than him, maybe mid-60s, wearing a plain canvas jacket, the kind you see at farm supply stores. She had no folder. No printed sheets. She was holding a small spiral notepad, the cheap kind students use, and a short pencil. She had not raised her card once during the entire morning. She turned in her chair, looked directly at him, and said something quiet. Not loudly, not dramatically. The way you might mention something to a stranger sitting near you at a bus stop. She said, "Are you buying this because the numbers say so, or because some part of you already knows this land is supposed to be yours?" He did not answer. Not because he was ignoring her. Not because the question bothered him. He did not answer because, and this is the honest part, he did not know. The bidding continued. 102,000. 104. He raised his card once, then held it. The auctioneer glanced at him. He had been to enough of these to know what that glance meant. It meant, "Are you still in this, or are you done?" He looked at his sheet. He looked at the number at the top. He looked at the score he had given this property, 73, and the little note he had written next to it in brackets that said below threshold. And then, for the first time he could remember, he stopped calculating. Not because the math stopped mattering. The math always matters. But something shifted in that moment. Something he would find difficult to explain later to his son on the phone that evening. It was not emotion overriding logic. It felt more like recognition. Like he had been doing long division on a problem he already knew the answer to. And the woman's question had pointed at that quietly, without making a big deal of it. He thought about the creek. He thought about a Saturday when he was around 9 or 10 years old, wading in shallow water with his boots off, the mud cold between his toes, catching a catfish with his hands, the way his father had shown him. He thought about how that afternoon had felt. Unhurried, whole, like time was not running in a line, but just sitting still around him. He had not thought about that day in a very long time. 109,000. 2 bidders now. Him and a man in a green jacket he did not know, who had the calm look of someone who had been to many auctions himself. 110,000. He raised his card. 111,000. The man in green raised his. The auctioneer looked at him. $1,000 left before his ceiling. Every single time before this moment, in every auction he had ever attended, he had known exactly what to do at this point. The ceiling was the ceiling. You did not cross it. That was the whole point of setting it. He raised his card. $112,000. The man in green paused. The room was quiet the way auction rooms get when everyone can feel something happening. The auctioneer counted. Going once. Going twice. The gavel came down. He sat for a moment after that, not moving, not celebrating. He was not the kind of man who celebrated at auctions, but he also was not the kind of man who hit his exact ceiling and still felt settled. That had never happened before. He expected to feel some version of anxiety, the "what did I just do" feeling. It did not come. He turned to look at where the woman had been sitting. She was gone. He had not seen her leave. He looked around the room slowly. The auction had already moved to the next lot. People were focused elsewhere. After signing the paperwork, he walked the parking lot. He was not sure what he was looking for, exactly. He spotted a woman near a blue pickup truck, but it was not her. He asked the volunteer at the registration desk if she remembered a woman in a canvas jacket, older, sitting near the 4th row. The volunteer described 2 or 3 people who could have fit that description. He could not narrow it down. He drove to the land. He parked on the gravel shoulder of the county road and walked the fence line. It was a warm afternoon, quiet except for the birds, and the low sound of wind moving through the trees along the creek. He found the water, which was smaller than the survey map had made it look, but wider than he remembered from when he was a child. Not that this was the same creek. Not exactly, but it was the same kind of creek. The same color, the same way it moved over the rocks. He stood there for a while, just stood there, doing nothing in particular. That evening his son called, or maybe he called his son. He could not remember later which way it had gone. He told him about the auction. He told him the price, and then, which was unusual for him, he told him about the woman and the question she had asked. His son was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that stayed with him. He said, "Dad, what if all those years of being careful were never about not buying? What if they were about making sure that when you finally found the right thing, you would actually recognize it?" He did not say anything back to that. He just thought about it. He is still thinking about it. A year and a half after that auction, the land is still his. He has not built anything on it. He has not sold it. He has cleared a walking trail along the creek, repaired the old fence line, and planted a row of trees along the west edge. The slow kind of trees that will not be fully grown for another 20 years or more. He goes there on the first Saturday of every month, usually alone. He walks the trail. He sits near the water. He does not have a plan for the land. He is not sure he needs one yet. He still goes to auctions. He still brings his folder. He still scores every property and writes his ceiling in pen at the top of the sheet. He is still the most prepared man in the room, almost every time. But there is one small thing different now. On his scoring sheet, next to all the numbers and the categories and the ratings, there is a new checkbox. No label. No explanation next to it. Just a small empty box that he either checks or leaves blank. He has never told anyone what it means. He does not think he has to.